Well, thank you for attending our webinar today on change management, best practices, risk reduction, and new supporting technologies. My name is Mike Zuckerman. I'm Knoa Software's Chief Marketing Officer. Knoa Software, briefly, just to share our credentials, is a leader in user experience management. Most of you may know that today we've licensed 20% of the Fortune 50 and hundreds of Global 5,000 customers, and provide products in the area of user experience management and our extensions that also instrument user performance. In the area of change management, this technology will turn out to be very compelling, and we'll share the stories why. And we should know as a group that user experience management and the compelling nature of the user performance management capabilities is not something that most of our customers woke in the morning and said that they were ready to buy. This technology is usually driven by a business case. It's very compelling, and it's usually wrapped around the way that you use the technology. The biggest use case, perhaps in the context of pain points, is clearly change management, and that's why many of you are here. It's just a big, big problem. So in terms of the product availability, I'll talk about it again. The product is available through multiple channels. SAP User Experience Management application by Knoa is sold directly by SAP. That's their product based upon technology that we sell to them. And they have a strong global team led by their education organization, and they'll work with any SAP customer gladly around the world. We sell other products which are branded as Knoa EPM and GEM to end users or to partners primarily in the Oracle world, where we have a heavy SAPO presence. Change management and risk reduction is an area that has not matured much the last 5 to 10 years. The processes that we see are the same over and over. We plan, we schedule, we build project charts, we focus on the process, we drive relentless attention to quality assurance, to test, to build, to automation. We know that enterprise software quality is very high, so we know when we're buying products such as SAP's application suites or other vendors that this is high quality products, and so we're fairly comfortable that systems are go. We look at customizations, which we know will be difficult. We've put them through special change approval boards. We've rolled out everything, hopefully in stages. Our user acceptance testing looks good. You've checked, you've double checked, you've got spreadsheets, you had a few people participate to look over your shoulder, and you're ready for that first 30 days of go live, the hypercare window. So everything looks really, really great. But when the sun comes up, as sure as you know that that sun will rise, we're faced with the scenario from our space program history, which was, Houston, we have a problem. The understated elegance to describe an impending disaster. And change management is usually that impending disaster for most of our customers. Change management is an area where perhaps 2/3 of the rollouts continually cause business disruption. It doesn't matter what we do, the state of planning doesn't give us what we need to make a better change. Different isn't better, different is different. And it's not only how it leverages your infrastructure, it's not only how it leverages the user applications, but it's also about the user themselves and their performance. Customizations, for which those of you that have many seats have a higher and higher percentage of customization, are the worst source of disruption. Somehow we designed this customization, it looked good, it passed the change board user acceptance testing. If you're in a smaller company, perhaps 2 people in IT and 1 business user looked at it and it made infinite sense. But when you rolled it out, disaster. And you are not alone. This happens to everyone with major enterprise apps all the time. I have one customer in a $5 billion company that's a CEO conversation. I met the gentleman in an airport, and with tremendous respect, he's switching from Oracle Financials to SAP. And he said, I'm really, really concerned about what's going to happen when I turn it on. As much as we phase it out, sales reps have probably put the fear of disaster in him, and for good reason. And so I have a dialogue ongoing with the CEO of a $5 billion company because change management mattered to him. So it's a limited opportunity for heroes. The risk is high, and we know all of those things already. Change management today is consumed by risk because every one of you is flying blind. That photograph really sums up what I hear from customers over and over again. We try to prepare, but we don't have visibility. We're going into battles we cannot win. We have blindfolds on, they hand us a sword and they say, go forth and slay the dragon. Every time we launch in that hypercare window, there are so many subjective issues that are hard to determine. And so in the final analysis, if it's between the group that rolled out the app and any user, the answer will be that, the user will have to win. So let's be clear, major release deployment is a very visible, high concern issue in the largest organization, and it's not going to change anytime soon. Now, the question you have to ask is, why are we flying blind? Really, where are these problems coming from? And to do this, you can ask a simple question, right? The simple question that we ask of our organization or of our customers is the simple test, right? Dear CIO, what do you think the average percentage of system error that you have in a production deployment? What percentage of user error do you have? What's the ratio between the two? And most of them don't know very much. Now, I've put up the answer to these questions, and usually the CIO is quietly astounded. Now, any CIO or IT director, anyone who's running a big department or has responsibility at this level in a smaller company is pretty savvy. So they'll keep their straight face and they'll say, well, we really know what's happening because in our remedy system or Soulman or our IT service desk vendor, we know that there's probably 1,200 bugs today, and we can characterize them. But truthfully, they haven't seen anything about user errors. Now, when you really start to characterize this, perhaps the best representation of how good this can be is how our best channel today, SAP, has assembled their vision in this area. So today, if you look at the customer base, the world out there, all of you, how are you handling this and how does it relate to change management? You know about your system errors because people call your service desk, but you're really looking at most of the time hit the windshield, right? Things hit the windshield. You don't see them coming down the road. Even if you're using a lot of APM tools and things that instrument your infrastructure, we know that most of the events you find out about are because a user calls the help desk, or even outside the help desk, a senior executive walks down the hall and says, we're not processing orders, right? And so you really don't have a view to user error. You know that there's 1,200 errors in your remedy system, and you can kind of guess that 2/3 will be user errors, but you really don't know, and the time delay to knowing is long to infinite. The next level where we've seen SAP take our technology, and I'm using SAP as your enterprise application example. It's just a good way to illustrate. They've taken their customers to really service 2.0 with this technology. That's what we do, pretty much out of the box and in conjunction with other things that they build. And it's the state of the art. Less than 1% of you are doing this. You know, when you implement the best practices we'll talk about change management you'll know that before we rolled it out, here's what we were seeing for errors when we tested, here's how it was different. And the day that we rolled out this release, we can see all system error, all user error, all master data error, all of it. And whereas at the service level 1.0, before we implement versus after, at service level 2, you know that there are 1,200 errors in my remedy system, but there are 10,000 errors across my enterprise, and only 1 in 9 is reported. And that changes the face of your ability to service your organization, of your ability to weather the change management traumas that you have to weather, and your ability to be successful. Now, when you take that to the third tier, which is visionary, we have customers out there like McKesson that not only know the state of the dashboard for their enterprise during change management process, but they also know these 5 problems are hitting these 8,000 users with the highest frequency, and based upon the time they lost with the problem, here's the economic impact today to my organization in lost productivity. And therefore, here's how I'm going to prioritize the fix. And a week later, here's how I'm going to measure the effectiveness. The CIO of McKesson knows more about the state of his enterprise than 99.9% of the other CIOs in the largest corporations in the world, because he's implemented SAP's vision. And in this case, we're talking about the SAP application set for how we wrap the technology around change management. And it's an amazing thing. So these are the places that we can go with these practices and the technology we'll share today. And this is something that scales from, you may have a few users, 1,000 users, where you get to the sweet spot of return on investment. And we have customers in production with tens of thousands, even customers today talking about 250,000 users. So this is a technology that scales with you. And that's really where some of our customers like SAP have really extended a vision to where no one can really compete with that vision. No one can do with our technology today what SAP can do. So it's a very interesting story. If you want to know more after this, the change management topic, you'd want to talk, if you have SAP installed, to your education account team. They're very close to the technology, or to your AE or your GAD or your client partner, and they'll get us more involved. In terms of what this all says now for change management is that we've gone beyond instrumenting the infrastructure. The key to change management is to instrument the user at the desktop. It's not just about the speeds and feeds of the network and the servers and the processors and SAP software. You've got RAID, you've got it virtualized, you've got it redundant. It's about also understanding the state of the user, because you and I both know now that 90% of the errors in your enterprise are about the user making a mistake. So you're trying to impact right now what's only 10% of your performance infrastructure error, and 90%, the great bulk of you aren't touching, and there's huge reward. IdealNet, an industry analyst that did a study on this specifically for life sciences, tells us they believe 70% of the ROI is available by instrumenting the user, not continuing to watch the infrastructure more closely. What all this means when you dig into change management is that you're also going to solve problems that were unsolvable, that just like your day-to-day monthly bills you paid because you didn't know there was a better way. Today we're focused on change management, but there are many, many other places you can go because you've never had a dashboard or a view to the proficiency and effectiveness of your users or their specific experience at their desktop, their IP address, their laptop, their end-to-end performance. 99% of you do not have that data, and that data enables solutions with profound and compelling impact. So what can we do in terms of how much data we can capture? Well, we are literally capturing everything about system error, user error, even a compacted form of the user workflow that will impact your ability to diagnose problems. And we're able to do this out of the box, even with your custom transactions. So if you think of every tool you've ever had in IT that you've used around change management or assessing your applications, you usually have to do some scripting. This stuff comes out of the box for the major, I say major iron, the big software enterprise applications that you will use. SAP is predominant. There are big Oracle apps and so on and so forth. And so you implement with a technology like SAP UEM, you're getting everything out of the box. Again, SAP's vision is very complete and very unique. And that saves you a ton of work and gets you way down the road. The differentiation here is that only Knoa or only SAP can tell you about the user proficiency. We're the only place today on the planet where you're going to see a dashboard towards that full user experience. And that's going to change the way that you manage your change management processes. So what's going to start to change? The first thing you're going to see, right, as we dig into the screens and look at the demo, is that you can see everything real time, near time. Before, you had those 1,200 errors in remedy, and the line of business vice president had to walk down the hall to the CIO to say, I am not getting productivity that I need to get everybody gathered in a room. Now, with this technology, you're going to know before people complain where the clusters of difficulty and change are. Even from hour to hour, week to week, or month to month, you'll know this transaction in testing looked like it would run right, but now that we've got 1,200 users on it, it's running 22% slower, and it's not about the network. It's about the users. So you're seeing this stuff firsthand. Because we instrument everything out of the box, not a transaction or a screen, everything. The analytics, which is, we're an analytics framework, right? Knoa EPM or SAP UEM by Knoa discovers all the problems and frames back to you clusters so that you can identify the opportunity for remediation. At McKesson, at a visionary account like that, they can even take clusters of user errors that are severe and significant, albeit not reported, and flow them right into their remedy system. That's the kind of world that you can get to, and it makes a big difference for what you can do. At McKesson, SAP UEM is their platinum standard because SAP has the vision to do things in the area of service that no one can do. For those of you that use SAP, I've worked with them a while, and I really know what they do well. SAP is an outstanding technology company. They're great at go-to-market, but their technology, what they build and the effort they put into it's tremendous. And in their quiet way, they've built out a vision that will ultimately change the face of customer service. Everyone is going to copy SAP in implementing this. We've already brought some pieces to the Oracle market, but let the truth be known that SAP has set the platinum standard. Visibility is enabled, proactivity is enabled, and you can do things that you've never been able to do before for change management. Now, if I said, let's be pragmatic here, what is low-risk change management? You're standing there, a new release to roll out to 2,400 users, and you're not liking it. Things are going to go wrong. Your boss is asking you every week, what are you going to do? And it doesn't matter what you do. You're headed into, Houston, we have a problem because you have no visibility. So these are the things you need to do to get that visibility. And to define that successful place, we've got to get you done on time, on budget, with no disruption. And that's going to get you to the place you need to be. We're going to look at 8 best practices. We're going to look at the screens quickly. Then our client partner and lead sales consultant, Ilya Epstein, will go through some of the actual screens and show them off. Perhaps the most important thing to do before you do anything, before you even think about rolling out a new release, is to know what your utilization is. Now, I'm going to use SAP as my example for these 8 slides, the best practices, because I'm going to steal screenshots from that environment. So if I use the Oracle Siebel product, I think I really need to tell you, what you're looking at and why. You've got to know what the utilization is. For example, if you were rolling to a new release of business objects, you want to know who's looking at what reports, because bringing that stuff forward might not make sense. So that's the first thing. You're going to know everything about usage patterns, who's using what, and the benefit to customers has been substantial reductions in the efforts required, substantial financial incentives and cost reductions. 2, I know from the world of testing, my spouse is a tester, in Silicon Valley and tests for a major software company. Developing test scripts is a huge amount of work, and invariably after the launch, there will be a problem and someone will say, well, we didn't test it right. Part of the remediation is to understand the real patterns of user behavior before you design tests in a vacuum. And now you have a tool to see this compacted workflow and to work with this data to see how everybody implements their transactions. You could see your super users, the people that are the fastest at implementing transactions and that have the least errors versus those people that are new or struggling. And you can see the patterns they take for your system. For those of you that have specialized needs, you can dig into this for purposes of compliance There's so much you can do with this. And this data will substantially reduce your cost to build these scripts out. So it's another best practice. By having a UEM tool with UPM kinds of data, you're able to do things that no one else can do. User acceptance testing is another area where there's so much subjectivity. People do so much, and then they frame it with spreadsheets they build manually that summarize, well, here's how UAT went. Hey, look, if UAT went as well as that spreadsheet said, then why are we having all the problems? We completely automate and instrument all of UAT so that the data that comes out of it is 100% quantitative and completely qualitative with respect to what happened. Everything is visible, everything is documented, everything is unambiguous, and you can see exactly where the problems are. And in an unemotional way, you know exactly how to go about remediating it. User interface problems and training needs are the soft side of productivity. Okay, we have a transaction that we found ahead of time that needs training and remediation, but you really need to have a good compass to solve that, because how do you solve it really? You've got to target training, you've got to enhance your FAQs, you've got to build out and make more robust your self-help, which is the ultimate goal. Your center of excellence team, if you have one, has to be on top of what the issue is. And when you do this with a tool like this, certainly as SAP has implemented their vision, there are just huge reductions here. We do not have hardly any customers that haven't saved millions of dollars per year with the technology. Probably a third have documented it in a hard way. Most will tell you that they know that this is the case. We have customers that are saving $10 million this year with the technology they acquired, specifically the visionary customers. And these small costs add up quite significantly in a large enterprise. The biggest one, when I talk about, there's a saying, there's no old, bold pilots, because if you were bold, you never got to be old. You crashed and burned, right? The goal is when you go live that you need to be on top of problems before your users pummel your IT service desk, before the line of business executive walks down to the CIO, knocks on the door and says, Houston, we have a problem. And what you have now is a dashboard in terms of performance at the user desktop for everything that's new, everything they're doing from the time they hit the enter key to the time they see a response. You can put up a dash that frames it in comparison, and you also see the user error. This is profound data that's never been framed in a dashboard like this. Now, there are some very smart people in the world that know where there are many log files and many tools where some of this data lives. But to take this data, frame it in analytics, and do the things we do has taken us a long time, especially for all the major enterprise apps that we support. And virtually there's no one today without a ton of manual labor that can share this view. This is unique. And as SAP has built it out on the SAP application side, it's visionary. SAP is doing things that no other vendor can do. And it's quite amazing what you can see. You are live. Your CIO can see a global view of your enterprise to every single error in your enterprise, reported or not, to your IT service desk. That will change the face of how you can manage your change control and how you can drive to change control, change management through your UAT process. Immediately after go live, you're going to want to know about system performance also. And for reasons we can't figure out, end-to-end performance is not easily measured at the server. You may have an APM tool that will tell you, hey, SAP is doing great. We just rolled out this new release and we added some more clusters of disk and we're 18% faster. But there's a user, in fact, 2 users that are running 40% slower. And you look at that user, they're on the same network as everyone else. They're getting the same resources. You've got some VMware in there. It's not affecting anything. Why are those 2 users slow? Well, with our technology, you'll be able to see exactly what's happening at their desktop And we have a special corollary technology called GEM. So if you think about UEM and the power that it extends through various products to instrument this view to the user performance and the infrastructure performance, that technology takes you a mile deep. It comes out of the box with every transaction, every screen, and every button. GEM takes you broad. And so now you start to see, how will I figure out why those two users are running slower? GEM lets you see everything running on the desktop in addition to the enterprise apps that you've taken 5 miles deep, like SAP or Oracle Siebel. And I can see that I have 12 browser windows open on one of those two users. And I can see that they've had them open all day, even though he's only looked at that browser window for 20 minutes one time and 2 minutes another. And I can see maybe that browser's got a memory leak in it and it's chewing up that workstation. Those are the kinds of things you can see because you've got an agent on the desktop and you understand 100% of that user experience. And those are the kinds of things that enable you to identify performance problems with incredible granularity in ways you couldn't do it before. One of the areas that line of business cares about a lot, sometimes IT isn't as focused. IT says, look, we got it up, the infrastructure's running, it's good, it's available, but inside the business unit, they are not getting the utilization for this new release. In fact, there are new features and new customizations, and something is wrong. People are using spreadsheets and doing some very strange things to get these transactions done. Application adoption in through the change management process is the single biggest opportunity to bring value to your organization. And customers that have utilized our technology to drive their change management process have been able to improve their adoption rates very, very substantially because they can see what's happening and they can see where the transactions are being accepted and where they're not. You can even see, if you look here, because this is my SAP demo screen, you can see that those are Z transactions which are customized. And we know from our surveys in the APM world that customized transactions will almost always be your greatest source of user problem. And when you roll out a new release and you do new customized transactions with the best of intentions, you will pave that road with lots of problems you didn't anticipate. So this kind of dashboard is going to give you your best practice solution to solving those things quicker, identifying them quicker, and getting your users to a happy place. As time goes by, acute problems, and in every IT organization, probably 25% of manager time is spent each month in a crisis room over some performance problem, right? And you tend to forget all of the user errors that are driving down productivity. But by having this dash, you're always in a position to watch the adoption, to watch the maturation of the technology, and you can start to do time frame based references between users and errors and system errors and start to see that the release is being adopted with the right effects that you expect. And sometimes problems don't happen for a while. Sometimes problems happen 2 or 3 months later. Sometimes problems with custom transactions reduce adoption, and you just don't know what's happening, except that the transactions are not being used. And yet your core business process and the KPI that makes your organization go is completely wrapped around those transactions. They need to work. So now we're back to complete visibility. So how can Knoa EPM change the upgrade equation? And in my case study today, we're talking about actual SAP UEM customers. And again, SAP has been the most visionary in bringing this technology out there. And so these are results that we've had with customers. They've been able to see their response times. They've been able to tell which transactions were out of range. They were able to understand user errors and the impact to system adoption. And they were able to substantially change the success of their rollout and to manage their hypercare window to a successful place. And all of our customers will tell you that they've been able to use the technology this way. For benchmarking, Service level agreements is the ugly side of what IT has to manage, because you've got your vendors. And we know that we in the IT shop never agree with our vendors. We're constantly in contention, but we're tough. We can do it. We're technologists. When you're on the user side, you have perceptions about what you're really getting, right? But you have to partner with IT, and it's frustrating because there's differences in perceptions. You need an unambiguous view, and what user experience management does for change management and understanding the results is that it tells you for every single desktop uniquely what was their experience, uniquely what was the performance of the infrastructure for them, uniquely how did they see the value realization. And so when you do this, the benefits for you are quite significant. You know where the plus side is, you know where you need to remediate action, and you have a very unambiguous view of your user world. Service level agreements are in contention everywhere, and we built a special webinar on that in a few weeks, because most of our customers tell us internally, between the line of business and IT, there's dissatisfaction. There's just not comfort. And the UEM tools flowing out of a change management process can get you to a much better place. We're not going to solve every problem, but you're going to have a much more objective view of that world. One area that I heard from a customer only a few weeks ago was, my user said, hey, we saved the data with this new transaction, but it's lost. But now IT can say, respectfully submitted, it looks like maybe you didn't save the data because I can see the workflow, right? So there's a lot of issues that you can address that would fall into the category of mysterious. You can understand performance problems. Instead of saying, my performance is bad. Well, if I looked at my old style legacy tools, it says the average transaction is 2.2 seconds. It looks pretty good, doesn't it? No. At that desktop, on that network, in Germany, in Munich, on this day, they are getting 5 seconds. And now you know that, right? And you understand all the reasons why. Change management can really take you to the next place. The analytics really gives you the opportunity to do things you've never done before. We're putting all this data in your business intelligence, right? If the example today is SAP screenshots, well, Business Objects is the platform of choice. And now that you have the data about the problems and the impact to user productivity, you can start to mix economic value with that, and you can start to do what the most visionary customers are doing. And you can see the economic impact of problems as you target and remediate them, and then see the benefit that you've accrued. Hardly anyone is doing anything like this around the world. Very few people are doing this, and you can get to this kind of capability very, very fast. McKesson, and in the upper right-hand corner, we have our Service 3.0 pyramid, is absolutely a visionary. They have done things with the technology that they have done, not because of the tools we give them, but because they took the capability and went a step further to build out a vision. They know, their CIO knows globally the state of every transaction, every user error. He happens to know that some were reported to remedy and some weren't, but 90% of them, 80% of them are things that are not reported. And he knows the economic impact of not having that stuff done. That's visionary, that's industry leading, and they have a user performance management team that builds out this capability, that understands it's not just about application performance management. They have a team that focuses on user performance management because the ROI is something they can harvest every quarter. And they're enabled by SAP's vision. SAP has uniquely assembled the right pieces to make this work. So McKesson is a tremendous example of what you can do on the visionary side. Now, in the SAPO world, we have a customer that's also done the same thing. British Telecom is saving £1.5 million in hard economic benefit, and they have done amazing things to instrument all of the portions of their organization that are wrapped around servicing the customer and CRM. And they are getting huge benefits and driving back to their stakeholders economic returns for cost reduction that go along with these benefits. And they're doing this with Siebel. They're doing a lot of the work themselves, the heavy lifting. And it's another, amazing example of a visionary customer out there in the world being successful. Kraft Foods is another great example for SAP. Kraft Foods was able to dramatically cut support costs, gain productivity, reduce training. And when they roll out their new releases, Kraft Foods is way ahead of everyone else in understanding the likely impact, the ongoing impact, and remediating it sooner than any other customer is likely to do. Rockwell Collins has focused very much on targeted training. For them, the training department really saw the technology as something they wanted to bring in and saw all the derivative benefits of understanding, hey, we rolled out a new release, and these 5 problems are the problems that need remediation. So the user community can now wrap to training, which can bring programs back to IT to knock down those incidences and knock down that problem. Products are fairly simple. I've already got questions showing up in email. What is it? How does it work? It's pretty simple. It comes out of the box. In the case of SAP UEM, it connects to everything automatically. It discovers and clusters all the areas of opportunity for your change management teams. You have visibility, and then you can dive into managing remediation of the problems you have. The dashboard's fairly comprehensive. There's a series of analytics screens that Ilya is going to show off in a moment. And the most important thing to remember, unlike most of the tools you see in IT that you'll run into, you're not customizing and wiring transactions with scripts. Even your standard custom transactions for your big apps, like certainly SAP, NetWeaver and Portal and CRM, all the stuff that runs in there. But even Siebel, right? The custom transactions that you implement are picked up automatically because of the technology that we've implemented within those vendors' frameworks. So we have some very special capability that saves you work in getting this stuff running. In terms of an enterprise class view, and the left-hand side is really, there is SAP UEM going miles deep in your biggest, most valuable enterprise apps. So you're seeing deep into that application. But on your desktop, you may have 20 apps and 13 windows running. And GEM takes you broad so that you can truly understand performance impact for a specific user and have a really good shot at diagnosing their exact problem. So we go deep with SAP UEM, we go deep with Oracle, but we go broad across the desktop so you can see what's happening in your user base. The architecture is surprisingly simple. The questions we get, I've already got 5 about how do I connect this? What's the risk? How long will it take? There is no back-end connection. Everything sits outside your SAP or your Oracle or your Microsoft or your Allscripts or whatever you're doing server infrastructure. It's non-intrusive. We have a small desktop agent that sits there and gathers data. That's part of how you bridge to cloud, is you've got to be on the desktop. And this technology, we have customers that are licensing hundreds of thousands of seats from us. We have a customer this week going into production with 70,000 seats. I can tell you most of the products out there can't handle anything like that kind of capacity. And that's a function of the architecture and the evolution of the product. We get this question all the time, so I put this slide in. People say, well, you talk about saving millions of dollars. I was just focused on solving a change management problem. Do you mean I can solve that problem and I can save money too? Yeah, it happens all the time. In this particular case, this is from an actual ROI analysis from a customer that purchased, and they've received benefits more towards the likely scenario than the conservative estimate. And that's what this technology will do. This technology will build a business case that will enable a budget that will produce business optimization. So in summary, as we head towards the demo, there's a lot of pain points around change management that we can target, we can hit hard, around user acceptance, adoption, the derivative training, the integration to the service desk, and for your CIO, the ability to see it all, which is something most of them can't do. I'm going to acknowledge trademarks from great partners like SAP and other vendors. And I'm now going to turn you over to Ilya for some hands-on visibility. Please don't forget to complete the survey, and I'll come back to the questions after Ilya completes the demo. Okay, hold on a second. I'll transfer it to Ilya. Okay, Ilya, take it away.
Thank you, Mike. I'm just switching here to my computer. It should come up in 1 second.
There you go.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. That was excellent. So for the purpose of today's demo, we're going to continue the discussion of change management. And we want to focus on the post-go-live aspect of change management. And there are two areas, there are 2 pain points that all of our customers are facing. The first one is the inability to see the impact of the change as it relates to real end users and real business processes. The second area is the lack of credible objective baseline as you're going into the rollout and as you're going through that hypercare period. So the question becomes, what is the truth? Where do I have performance problems? How do I prioritize the resources and so forth? So for this purpose, we're going to take a look at a sample dashboard that Mike talked about. We're going to look at an application support dashboard. You can see very quickly that our solution, because we're sitting at the desktop, we're able to monitor all of your SAP or any target application, whether it's SAPO or Allscripts or some of the other products that Mike talked about. We're monitoring this on the desktop without ever interfacing or touching any of your back-end systems. So for example, let's take a look at my production system. As you can see, because we're monitoring real users within the real application, these are not robots, these are not scripts, I have very concrete baselines for each of the application components. So right here, we're looking at a sample data set for an SAP application, and you could very clearly see some of the baselines for response time, for example, and operation execution for each of the transactions. Now, because we're doing continuous monitoring of all the users all the time, I now, for the first time, have some credible baselines as I am going into this change. So, for example, here we're looking and comparing the first 2 weeks of April versus the last 2 weeks of April, and let's assume that April 15th was that change event. So now, for each transaction within the application, I can quickly see what is the impact of that change for each of the components of the application. So here you can quickly identify, for example, a couple of transactions. And by the way, you can see these are Z transactions, so these are custom transactions, and we're monitoring them without any scripting or any modification to the application. We are 100% out of the box. Very quickly during this hypercare period, I could see that these several transactions are actually taking a major performance hit, right? So they're slowing down. And again, this is an objective metric. This is not what an individual user says he feels, but this is what is monitored by our agents on the user's desktop. Now, what's more importantly is that in addition to a significant drop in the response time, you can see that there's also major impact in terms of operation execution. The actual adoption of this process has dropped, so users are not using this process, and that's very common. As the application performance degrades, the users are no longer using that process, but then the question is, what are they doing? Have they found a workaround, or are they just not doing or executing this process? Is this going to lead to a delay, for example, in a financial close? Is this going to cause a problem in my month and quarter end activities? This is the type of insight that you could gain only from Knoa, because we are sitting at the desktop and we could give you that level of granularity in terms of user impact and, more importantly, the business process impact. Now, what you will also note is, in addition to just telling you where within the application you have a specific problem, we could also leverage what's called the user attributes, information about the user, to give you even further insight. So for example, what if I could see during that hypercare period, during the rollout, the impact across the site where these users are located. And I could do that very quickly. So I can see here there are a couple of sites where response time is much worse than the other location. So my support teams have now some very quick and accessible data that they could use to prioritize the troubleshooting and remediation steps during that hypercare period. Another area which is extremely important during a change management event is not just measuring the response of the application, but also measuring the adoption of the application. And for that purpose, I'm going to go into an activity analysis dashboard. Let's assume you rolled out a new business process, and it's a global business process, maybe within SAP or within SAPO, and you want to measure how that process is being adopted. Are users utilizing that process, or maybe they're using the old mechanisms, maybe they're using the old systems, or maybe they have created some manual workaround in an Excel spreadsheet. So with our solution, again, because we're sitting at the desktop and because we're monitoring all applications and all users all the time, we could quickly identify the adoption of any specific application. So let's take a look again. We're looking at some SAP data here. I'm going to take a look at the various transactions, and let's pick something simple. We have VA02, which is a sales order transaction in SAP. And let's say I made an update and I just released a new version, and I want to see how this transaction is being adopted across my enterprise. So very quickly, I could identify that there are 21 users here that are utilizing this transaction. You could also see, by the way, that this transaction is actually broken down into a lot of screens, over 100 different screens. So your business teams and your IT teams could quickly identify which component of the transaction is actually being utilized most in terms of time and resources. And I could quickly identify the users that are utilizing this transaction in an efficient manner and those that have not yet adopted it. And I could quickly see that based on their activity metrics.
Hey, Ilya?
Break this down based on user attributes. Again, those sites, right? So if you're doing a global business process rollout and it's impacting 20 or 30 different sites, and you want to see, is everyone following, is everyone on board, you can quickly identify that. So here, for example, I can see a couple of sites on the top here are doing pretty well. They're adopting this process, but there are definitely some laggards. And the question is, why are they not following this process? Do we need to go and come in with additional training? Is it a question of providing some additional support? And you can quickly create those remediation programs during the hypercare period. Another metric when it comes to measuring your change event or understanding the user impact is the amount of user errors. And Mike has talked a lot about this. Knoa is the only solution that provides 100% of user errors from the desktop. There's no other solution out there. So again, I'm in the same business process. I'm within the sales orders within SAP, and I want to quickly see during this change event what kind of impact this is having in terms of my errors within the transaction execution. So here very quickly, I could identify various errors. I could see logging issues, material issues. A lot of these are work stop issues. These are actually causing a delay in my sales orders. And this is the unique insight that Knoa could provide because we have such granular visibility into the business process and understand the users that are utilizing those processes. We could then translate the effect of that change, the change event or the negative impact of that change event to your bottom line in terms of business, in terms of number of orders, in terms of your financial flows, and so forth. And again, because we're monitoring all the users all the time, you could also gain immediate actionable insight as to the specific users or specific areas which are in need of additional training or additional help. McKesson, as Mike has indicated, is actually using this data to help them drive their key user and super user programs. So the key users could very quickly identify who are the users that are struggling during normal operations, but of course also during any type of change event. So these were some of the examples of how our solution used in change management. I'm going to pass back to Mike to finish off the webinar, and we'll take some questions as well.
Okay, so leave it on that screen, Ilya. I like that screen better than our big question mark screen. So the good news and the bad news is that I have 30 some odd questions. I'm going to go through 5 to 10 and watch the clock. Some have been repeated many times. One I get is, please explain what SAP sells, what you sell, who sells GEM, who do we call? Seems to be confusing people. My apologies. SAP is the only place in the world to get SAP User Experience Management by Knoa. As a practical matter, we don't sell that direct to anyone. We don't sell it to partners. SAP controls a partner system around the world that supports it. They are the experts, and they've added many extensions through their training group to wrap other technologies around it to build out what I think of as, the ultimate vision for where you can go. We sell directly or through some Siebel Tier 2 partners, various components for Oracle, and we predominantly do that in North America, but we have some activity in Asia and Europe. And GEM is available strictly from Knoa on a direct basis for your desktop broad view. Question number 2. I'm gonna do all the Ilya questions because these are getting tough for me. What backend integration is required for the software? I am using Siebel 8.1.
Right, that's a great question. And the beauty of our solution is that for any application, whether it's SAP, whether it's Siebel, we don't need any backend integration. We only sit on the desktop, and that's it. Okay,
next one. I use SAP ERP. Will this work through the NetWeaver portal?
Yes, absolutely. For SAP, we support all of the user interfaces that SAP developed. That includes SAP GUI, Web GUI, Portal, CRM, and Business Objects.
Okay, we're doing pretty well here. We have a lot of APM tools. We have a UEM tool that measures server-side view. I've never seen anything like your dashboards. This is a do you really, Ilya? Do you really capture all of the user era? How can I see the other dashboards? Can you do a demo for our CIO? That's a Ilya question.
The answer is yes to all. Yes, we capture 100% of all the user errors. Everything that the user is getting from the application is captured, and we'll gladly show you and your CIO various dashboards and do a deep demo, including other use cases which we haven't had a chance to show.
Yeah, I think this user is actually in Norway. That's kind of amazing. Thank you for even submitting the question. Please provide more data on application adoption. I heard that mentioned. What does that mean?
A key aspect of application adoption is how much time the users are actively spending within the application. Just because an application like SAP is open on the user's desktop doesn't mean that the users are actively working. Maybe they walked away, maybe they're working on another application. With our solution, and it's uniquely to Knoa, because we're on the desktop, we can actually identify when the user is idle or when he has switched to another application. So we provide the only true measure of an application adoption when it comes to any enterprise application.
Okay, I think the English is a little strained here. I think the business intelligence is business objects for your analytics. Yes, we use business objects for our dashboard. Will I also get performance metrics on business objects in your dashboard, Ilya?
Absolutely, and this is actually a recurring use case that's coming up as customers are migrating from business objects 3.0 to 4.0. We're seeing more and more customers coming to us asking to utilize Knoa in that change management event.
Okay. This is interesting, not really change management. I work in training, and we train new and existing SAP and Salesforce users perpetually. Please explain how this can help us. Is there ROI in training?
Yes, absolutely. And we have many examples, including Rockwell Collins and others, where the training was the primary ROI model for that customer. And the basic premise is we are allowing customers to revolutionize the way they're doing training. For the first time, you could actually do training based on the user's activity, based on where the user is struggling, instead of blindly doing it based on the user's role. And that allows you to save a lot of classroom hours, a lot of e-learning hours across your entire organization.
Okay, I'll try to squeak two more in here. I have a different analytics product. We use Oracle for analytics. Our HR and CRM is SAP. How would this work? Well, generally, if you're an SAP customer, the product of choice is clearly business objects. And if SAP is your core application, this is probably a good time for you to consider, maybe I want to bring in a few seats of business objects and try it out. We also support a sort of Knoa branded environment, which is built upon microdynamics. MicroStrategy. But I think, you really want to look at the base application to drive your analytics decision. If you're an Oracle customer using Siebel, I think it's a much easier discussion. But if your core application is SAP, you have a choice to try business objects, and we'll help you get set up and get rolling there. It's what's comfortable for you. I'd recommend you talk to your education team. They're very knowledgeable on these sorts of issues, or talk to your AE or your global account director, but they'll move heaven and earth to help you going with business objects, and that's probably the right move for you, at least for the applications that Knoa supports. I have one more question here, Ilya, which is a little open-ended, but I'll pass it to you. Tell me again what McKesson is doing with your system, I think at the 1,000-foot view, Ilya.
So McKesson is basically driving their entire user sustainability effort using the Knoa metrics. This includes everything from their super user program to their user support from level 1 all the way through level 3. It includes their training programs, their self-help content. All of that is being driven by the Knoa metrics that we provide.
I would add that they have added substantial value that goes above and beyond what we have. They've done some remarkable things, and they've done that in conjunction with SAP in the build out of the vision, but they're doing things that you would not get out of the box from us, and that's part of being a visionary customer. Well, I'm going to call the questions now. We'll respond to everybody else via email. Please take the survey. There's a reward for some of you that get it in. You'll also get a free copy of the survey on change management, and it's just multiple choice. I think you'll go through it fairly quickly. Thank you for attending. Ilya, thanks for a great demo, and everybody have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.